The information in this podcast is not intended to be used as the primary basis of investment decisions. Any forward-looking statements are not guarantees of future performance, and actual results may differ, or other factors may change.
Welcome to Making Sense, the podcast for anyone interested in diving into the investing and startup space. Hosted by us, Emma and Carmen.
We are interns at Red Thread Ventures, an investment and advisory firm based in Vancouver. From interviews to startup advice, we will take you on our journey as we learn more about the finance industry.
With that being said, let's get right into today's episode.
Hi, everyone. We are very excited for today's episode. We have a special guest here with us today, Chenny. Chenny is the co-founder and CEO of GotCare and has a lot of major insights to share with us today. And with that being said, Chenny, how about you tell us a little bit more about yourself and GotCare?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Carmen, and thanks for having me today. So I'm an experienced designer and technologist by training, and have become an entrepreneur, I guess, just due to circumstance. I played a leadership role at multiple different design consultancies for over a decade before I decided to focus on home health. So right now, as you know, I'm the CEO of GotCare, and we're a health tech company that's transforming how home care is delivered. With things like COVID and our aging population trends, the need for home care transformation has never been greater.
That transition from design to health tech, that's a big switch. How did you end up making that decision?
Yeah, well, you know how sometimes you hop in the shower and you realize a chapter of your life is ending, but you don't know what the next chapter is? So that was kind of me and my relationship with consulting. So actually, one of my very last projects that I worked on was with a consortium, an industry consortium with 3 of Canada's largest home health providers. And yeah, we were just digging deep into this complex issue. And long story short, we realized that the weight of status quo was too heavy to change anything. But having done over a year of R&D, I just really felt called to work and focus on this specific problem. Also because there just weren't a lot of other technologists or millennials, for lack of a better word, who are interested and engaged in this specific topic area. And community care has always been something that's been near and dear to my heart as well, just from my personal life and experiences.
Mm-hmm. So were you involved in more of like the design element of this project then before transitioning into technology? Like, how did that work? Did you have any experience working with technology before?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I say experience design, it's like a very broad term. So on both the design thinking side of things, as well as the tech implementation side of things as well.
Awesome. And so I know you kind of talked about how you're kind of reflecting upon your life, and that's how you kind of went into this next step. But have you always known you wanted to go into entrepreneurship, like as a kind of an end goal?
I mean, I feel like I am a accidental entrepreneur. So I started my first business, I guess when I was, like 12, 13. I was making, I don't know, okay, this is going to date me a little bit, but I was making angel fire websites for random strangers on the internet. And I had a whole online account that I was taking money from. So that was really the beginning for me. And I always thought that was just a better gig than, delivering newspapers and like what other options were available to you as like a 13-year-old. Yeah. So I forgot. And I guess, it's just, for me, what I really love about it is that you get to really dig deep on the problem that you're focused on in a way that feels authentic to you. So yeah, I mean, I have tried and dabbled with employment, but I'm just like a really bad employee, frankly. So I feel like I have no other options.
That's so cool that you were starting like working with websites web and design right from the early age of 12. Did you continue on that path for a little bit? Like how long did that take you, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just naturally led me to my consulting practice, starting at my own group as well. It just felt natural, especially because as I was going into university, my family comes from, I would say, a very humble socioeconomic background. So just as a way to pay for tuition and my rent and food and everything else, it was just a lot more sustainable. Like I said, I tried to do the employment thing, but then I actually ended up working myself sick. So when I was in uni, I had 2 different jobs that I needed in order to pay for all my bills. I actually ended up hospitalized for 6 months with a very bad kidney infection. And I realized, well, I need to be a lot more effective with my time. So that's when I decided to start my firm at that time. But it was a really natural progression, really.
That just shows how important like mental health and enjoying your job is for your physical health as well, right? After you made that transition though, what's now your favorite part of working for yourself, being your own entrepreneur, starting GotCare?
I mean, I think I feel like I don't mean to sound cheesy, but really for me, entrepreneurship has enabled a path towards my own healing. And so for me, leading a startup, really the best part of it is around creating a new narrative for what success looks like. So as an example, like we don't believe in the 20x investment returns because we prioritize paying our frontline workers a living wage. And I also know that the resilience of our business is dependent on how deeply we are in relationship to others, whether that's in the ecosystem that we work in or with our investors or just supporters at broad. And even as a team, like we have conversations about how we want to show up in the world and therefore how our work can enable that. So, I mean, I'm sure for some listeners, they're like, wow, that is very unconventional. But it's, I don't know, it just feels really authentic to me. And it's kind of like, I guess like the classic saying, it's like, be the thing you want to see in the world. So yeah, just really, really, the permission that entrepreneurship affords you to do that is something that is really special.
You mentioned a little bit there that you have a different and unconventional approach to success. So just like a short one-liner, what does success look like for you and for GotCare?
I mean, for GotCare, so there's different sides. So first and foremost is our mission, which we are living every day, which is pay care workers more and provide receivers of care, so patients, a more affordable option for home care. So just even the fact that we're existing and a viable option for people, for me, is what success looks like. And then beyond that, of course, making sure that we provide a reasonable and fair and sustainable return for our shareholders as well. But first and foremost is definitely more so on the impact side and showing the world that, there is a different way to show up than the traditional venture formula.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think and we've come across like a lot of pitches within our internship, and I think that GotCare is one of the ones with like the most meaning and purpose behind it. So it's been awesome to see. But as a female entrepreneur, what has been the greatest hurdle you've had to overcome?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks. I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, sometimes I feel like a weirdo. I mean, okay, let me reframe. I often feel like a weirdo. And I think for me, it's just a sense of belonging. Like when you push against status quo, right? Like status quo pushes back. And it pushes back like pretty, brutally. And so typically that shows up in many different forms, but like I'll give you an example. So often when you push towards status quo, one way that it pushes back is usually in the terms of like how money flows. So in our case, it would be the funders of care and also potential investors, basically like people holding all the money bags. And it's just really tough to draw boundaries and to stay true to who you are in front of powerful and credible and such confident forces. And also it's just really tough to draw boundaries for yourself and even stay true to who you are as an individual. But yeah, I mean, I feel really grateful that we at GotCare, we have a huge community of support, whether it's advisors, mentors, board members, friends, or family. And yeah, what I feel I have so many people that I can call at any given point, where I'm like calling them, and I'm usually like, being honest with you, I'm usually crying because I'm very torn and in conflict. And they just magically remind us of what we're here to do and why we're here to do it. And it's this, you know, just this really special moment of like, oh yeah, no, we can choose to stay true to who we are, and we just have to be patient and the right people will show up.
Yeah, surrounding yourself with the right people, I think that's just so important when you're starting out something. I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of young women especially, have felt some of the same struggles that you've been going through recently. And I think personally, just seeing people in your shoes, people who are making changes, is really, really inspiring to follow. So thank you for doing that. But what is one of your proudest achievements to date working with GotCare, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was like, for me, it was always theory. It's like, okay, can we do good and make money and like a reasonable amount at the same time? Like, can both things be true? So yeah, so for me, I'm proud of the fact that we're existing and thriving. So just like some data points, you know, we're doubling our revenue every year right now. And we just raised a $1 million pre-seed round. And this is all done on a value proposition of paying workers more and giving patients more power, which honestly, I never would have thought that we could do both of these things given that value proposition. So frankly, some days I'm still like pinching myself for sure.
Yeah, it's just really inspiring to see that you don't have to risk like purpose for, I guess, capital and vice versa. So to see that being done simultaneously is definitely really inspiring. And even in school, as schools start to push more of like sustainability and like ethics-driven business, it's really, I mean, it's great to see that it can work. But earlier you mentioned kind of having people to turn to and people who you can call to. Do you have a specific go-to mentor, or like what's kind of the story with that? Like, who's the person that is always there supporting you and has been there from the start?
Honestly, I feel like I have so many people. So I actually have my whiteboard right here. And so this is really, so it's a framework by Wendy Palmer, and it's called Your Best Self. And so basically it's a practice to really call into, you know, who you are and how to show up in the way that you want to show up. So basically the steps are, one is to breathe. So you inhale, uplift, and then you expand your presence. So basically you're expanding yourself in your physical space. And then from there, you're just smiling and settling. And the last part that I love is called team of supports. So basically you're calling in and visualizing all the people who have supported you in getting to where you're at. And so through this practice, I think what I've learned is that it's not just the people that I'm in touch with on a regular basis, but it's actually the spontaneous interactions or the one-off interactions where someone says something that really resonates and really pushes me forward in a specific direction as well, just equally as powerful. So yeah, I feel grateful that we have such a large community. But just like to name some folks who have got us here, you know, a big player of that has been CEO, which I'm sure you're aware of, and of course as well the team at Red Thread and Tandem has been a critical part of our journey as well. But yeah, just so many people. But even just our patients. Like, I find that whenever I get lost in like the other stuff, all I have to do is just talk to someone on our team who talks to a patient, or talk to a patient directly about what's going on for them, or like ask for feedback, or like something like that to ground myself back into that. And yeah, it's actually them who also largely inspire us to keep going, because the impact of their life is like, it's really hard to describe in words, right? Like when you when you empower someone to be able to start taking ownership over their healthcare decisions and that they feel that they've regained the sense of identity and self, it's like, I can't put that on a metric, but I can feel it when I'm in conversation. So
I love to hear that you are in contact with your customers as well, because I know a lot of people who are starting businesses, they can run like everything up here and then they leave the customers at the bottom. So I think that's a very cool way to think about this. You also touched a little bit about your experiences with CEO. And do you mind just elaborating on your involvement in that network?
Yeah, for sure. So around your first comment, it's basically around a practice. So it's a well-established practice. It's emerging. It's called human-centered design. So basically what it means is that we're making business decisions, product decisions, all of it from this human-centered lens. And there's lots and lots of great frameworks and tools online for anyone who's curious about that. I think it's, in order for you to like get your team to practice what you preach, you have to do it. And I mean, Shio is also just like a super magical network. So yeah, I call them like my family. So anytime that I need something, so anytime I need a connection to something or someone or an organization, or if I need I have a specific question that I'm looking for advice on, I know that I can post it to the community, and generally within 48 hours, I have a diverse selection of responses and people to go to. So it's been really great. Basically, Shio is just a global network of women who want to support other women that are working on the world's, they call it to-do list, which is basically based on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And it's thousands of women who want to see you working on that list. So it's great because when in that community, I find that I'm already surrounded by values-aligned people. So that's already one barrier that's completely gone. So you can just lay it all out without any worry or fear in that way.
It's amazing. Was that also how you were connected to the Spring Activator Challenge? Me and Carmen were there watching the finals. You did a great job, by the way. I noticed that there was a few other CEO funded companies that are in there as well. And I thought it was really cool how they had such a big reach on this.
Yeah, it's definitely a community and like a, again, not to be cliche, but kind of like a sisterhood. Even in the process of fundraising, we have a Slack channel and that we set up where ventures who are currently fundraising, we talk to each other, we share contacts, we share templates and decks and feedback to each other. So yeah, I don't know what else to tell you. It's great. If you are a venture that is predominantly women owned, and women, by women we mean women and non-binary, yeah, go apply. It's great.
Yeah, while we were watching the finale, we were definitely rooting for GotCare. But so something, when we were introduced to GotCare is through the RTV pitch, and we noticed that you do deliver very compelling and it's a very straightforward and engaging pitch. So in your opinion, what is the key to a successful pitch presentation?
Well, I think there's two pieces of it for me, and for every person it's different. I think like I don't think there's like a magical formula, but the formula that works for me is one is speaking your truth, like really just saying what it is that you feel you need to say as a part of the story of what you're doing and why you're doing it and why it's important. I think the more authentic you can share that and the more vulnerable you can be in that share, the more it'll connect to people, like the more that they'll feel drawn in, the more that they'll feel like you're the right person to do this, and all of those great things. And then the thing I've learned is brevity. Like less is more, and less is also hard, but the less you say, the more people remember. So.
And how did you come up with this like strategy for yourself, these 2 points?
Trial and error.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like I really do think that the formula is different for every person, because for each person to pitch in a way where they feel confident and they feel authentic and they they are proud of their own pitch. That's just going to look different. Like for me, it's, when we got to the point of, and Red Thread was a key part of this in terms of us refining our pitch. But when we got to the point where I'm like, okay, I've done this pitch now to the point where it doesn't even matter what the response is. I'm just proud of the fact that this is what we're doing. And I know in my heart we're going to get there because I just have confidence in our own pitch. Like that's the moment where I feel like it stops mattering so much, because at that point it's less about, oh, is my pitch like any good? And it's more about, okay, how do I connect to people that this message resonates with? And if this message doesn't resonate with that person, that's not because my pitch is bad. It's because I'm not meant to be connected to that person. And that's A-okay. Like, we don't need every person that we pitch to like us.
So. I love that mentality. I think that's kind of a bit of the vision behind Red Thread. Our name actually was just inspired after the legend that everyone we are connected to is bound by fate. So if you're meant to come across someone, then it's going to happen. And if it's not, oh well, it's not for you. It's not something to stress about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is there any other employees, businesses, people you've come across that you thought was fate, that it was a very good connection? Anyone you can speak to about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just for me, I feel like it's the other ventures that we're connected to and that we're friends with and that we support in each other, that really inspire me personally, and that just sharing lessons learned and being hand in hand in the journey. So for example, Bree from Nada, Suzanne Simmons from ISLE, which are both companies I know that Red Thread also supports. Just great, really has been really inspiring for us as we've gone through this journey.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And in terms of your GotCare team, what were some of the key characteristics you were looking for when you were kind of assembling your dream team? Was it some sort of like background, qualifications, mentality, attitude? What were you kind of looking for there?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's like your standard stuff, right? Like, are you all a good personality fit for each other? Do you complement each other's skills? For example, there's many different frameworks that you can use. One of them that I really like is like the Ambassador creative problem solving framework. So basically it like puts people into 4 categories. You're a generator, so an idea generator, you're a conceptualizer, you're an optimizer, or you're an implementer. And most people are like different combinations of these things. So basically in your team, you want like a healthy balance of all of these things so that we can all step into our greatest strengths. But then I also think there's other things that have been really helpful in terms of, true diversity. And for me, it's not just diversity in terms of gender and race, but it's actually also diversity in age, which is something that I think is really unique in GotCare compared to other ventures. So for example, even on our founding team, there's from our youngest founder to our most senior wise founder. We have an age gap of, let's see, over 23 years. So I think that it's that diversity in its true definition that allow us to bring just wisdom and knowledge from different contexts and different generations and different industries, along with the fact that we are balanced from an assessment standpoint in terms of what our core strengths are, and making sure that we have all of the key pillars and diversity in that, and we all are doing things that we all love instead of those like annoying tasks that you pick up when you have time. It's like, no, we're all doing the stuff that we love. I think it's just that magical combination that makes it work.
Yeah, the age diversity thing, I think, is something that isn't talked about enough. We hear so much about gender and background and ethnicities, but not really in age. But something you also mentioned was kind of balancing people's strengths. But as a CEO, how do you kind of manage weaknesses within your employees?
I mean, I feel like at a certain point, it's just easier to focus on your strengths than it is to focus on your weaknesses. I have this tool that I use. It's called a user manual. I'm happy to share a link with you. You can share it as like part of the notes. But basically, it's literally like a user manual for how to work with Chenny. And it literally is just like, these are all my strengths. These are all my weaknesses. And here's how you can cope with them. For example, these are the ways I like receiving feedback. These are the ways that are the easiest to communicate with me. Like, I actually think being explicit about it is how you deal with it. Like, we don't need to be like perfect humans that are like good at everything. We just have to lean into what we're really good at and make sure we help guide others and provide them with tools to navigate the stuff that we're not so good at.
I love that. So going forward from here, what is your vision for the next steps with GotCare, or even your personal next steps?
Yeah. So what we're doing with our latest round from a funding allocation standpoint is just scale. So we're in full scale mode. However, we're also building a really cool program that we're proud of. So we're building a program called Care at Cost, and that's exactly what it sounds like. So basically, throughout someone's home health journey, there's multiple points where the amount of care that they're assessed for is not enough. So what we believe in is, hey, well, through the funding sources, we're already making enough, like our definition of enough. So for families that need more than that, let's figure out a way where we can get them formalized care with the existing same provider that they're already working with at a point where it's care at cost so that they can actually afford it. Because if we don't, then status quo is people go under the table, people pay cash, or people quit their jobs so they can supplement caregiving for their loved ones. And neither of those things are viable long-term options for our systems. So yeah, so we're really, really excited about care at cost and what that means for the people that we already serve and the people that we have yet to touch.
Is this something that you're funding through the money that you've raised for GotCare, or some of your ongoing revenue? Like in a few years down the line, how are you expecting to pay for this?
Yeah, so care cost is a very it's a at cost model, so it's not like we're taking a loss or anything like that, and it works at scale. So yeah, so we believe that we choose to believe that at scale, this is something that not only is sustainable, but is actually enabling our scale, because there are so many healthcare professionals out there that we have not yet to work with, health systems that we have not yet to work with. And I think care cost is another great way for us to enter those markets and to an easy way in.
Yeah, it's great to hear some of the next steps for GotCare, but what about for you personally? Like, are you hoping to dive into more startups, kind of be an advisor for other startups? What are kind of the next steps for you?
I don't know. I think right now I feel like I've got my hands full. But yeah, I think that so my husband and I we've started exploring some other ambitions in our life as well. We actually just applied to become respite foster carers, and yeah, so I think for us it's really just feeling our way through the experience in terms of what feels right in the moment. But yeah, like I think it's really just around how can I continue to show up in a way that I feel proud, and that's a moment by moment experience. So yeah,
I think that's so inspiring to see that your values coming through in your work, coming through in your life, your relationships. Wow.
It kind of sounds like your mentality is kind of just like kind of going with the flow and just enjoying every moment, which I think is kind of overlooked by people who are so ambitious and are trying to get to the next stage in their lives. But just kind of to end off our discussion here for our listeners, what are some resources that you would recommend for someone trying to jump into entrepreneurship? Any books, websites, podcasts?
Yeah. So first of all, I would like I actually can't remember who told me this, but it was something along the tune of like the journey is the destination. And I was just like, oh, fine. Literally, it's this moment of like, fine, you're right. Okay, well, I guess I'm already here, so I guess I might as well enjoy it. Yeah, and in terms of resources, there's a few. I think it depends on what lens you're looking at. So yeah, so I think practically one resource I'd really recommend is called Liberating Structures. They have a book as well as an online repository as well. It's by Henry Manschwitz as well as Keith McCandless. And basically what I love about Liberating Structures, it's a bunch of frankly, like leadership tools that you can use with your team to really liberate them and to pull basically to pull the peak performance out of your team. And so that's the goal of Liberating Structures. I found it to be a very inspiring and powerful set of tools. It's especially helpful in times of conflict and tension. And because I think that in those moments of conflict and tension is also where the greatest opportunity lies. So really it's about how do you navigate through that? How do you move through that as a leader? And yeah, so highly recommend that resource. Another one, so kind of like scaling up a little bit, another one that's really great is a book called Reinventing Organizations by Frederick Laloux. And what I love about Reinventing Organizations is it basically, it kind of like uses color codes to share different organizational structures. So for example, actually funny enough, through the analysis of organizations, they're like, okay, so, for example, banks and militaries, they actually share the same type of organizational structure. It's very chain and command, it's very process heavy and driven and things like that. So they call it orange. And then funny enough, actually, or not funny enough, I guess, or unfortunately, I guess, for startups, if you look at the general structure and that of gangs and mafias, it's actually really, really similar. And so they call them red organizations. And so it's very much like a high stakes situation. And there's lots of behaviors around that where it's kind of just like very, very scrappy and you just kind of like figure it out. And then there's also, but what I also love that Frederick labels is aspiring colors. So he has green organizations, which basically feel like, you're sitting at a family table and everyone has a place and a spot and everyone feels that they have an equal opportunity to share. But then there's another one, which is what we strive towards, which is called teal organizations, which basically means self-managing and self-organizing organizations. And yeah, and that obviously goes hand in hand with liberating structures. So if you're curious about how to design your organization in a different way, be it if you're a startup or a big organization, it's a really helpful resource. And then the last one personally that I love is, I'm sure you've heard of it, it's called Designing Your Life by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. And what I also love is that they have a bunch of tools within the book as well for you to kind of like assess where your life is at and what you want to change and some ways to transition towards that as well.
Just going back, quick question. Why do you think that GotCare is teal and not the traditional red grouping?
I mean, I think we're still aspiring teal.
Yeah.
Aspirational, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's just in terms of your process. A large part is what happens when X happens. What are the social norms? What are the behaviors and culture behind that? Is really what drives that. And yeah, don't get me wrong. Like we shift back into red, absolutely. And there are also times where red is helpful. Like it doesn't mean to say that any of the colors are bad. I think it's more so just there's a place and a time for different colors. And it's more around what is the most helpful mode to be in. Like even at Google, right? They have like this thing called like peacetime mode and wartime mode or whatever the right label is. It's like, yeah, like I think it's the same thing, but there's probably more variance than that in terms of there's different stages of your journey and there's like ups and downs and what is needed also changes. But being very clear and intentional about how your organization runs during those moments, I think, is what's really critical.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I know I personally, Carmen too, learned so much, and I just really enjoyed having the opportunity to talk to you. Even after our first presentation, we're like, this girl's cool.
Yeah.
we want to learn more about her. So I hope everyone else who was listening was able to learn just as much as us, be inspired from your experiences as well.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to today's episode of Making Sense. We hope you loved hearing Chenny's story about her experiences with entrepreneurship and were able to pull some lessons and ideas from our talk today. As usual, make sure you're following Red Thread Ventures on LinkedIn to stay up to date with all of our announcements, and subscribed and following our YouTube, Spotify channels, or wherever you stream your podcasts. Next week, we will be back with more guest interviews. We can't wait to see you then.